Welcome back to part 3 of Oppenheimer movie explained and thoroughly analyzed. I'm Raphael Daniel. Hopefully you've watched the first two parts. If you haven't, you're welcome to do it. I recommend. Um, there are links below, and we're talking about symbols in the film's meanings, themes, and psychological, social, and spiritual messages of the film Christopher Nolan wants to deliver us. Again, excuse me forgive me for my English, which is not my native language, but as I've said in former videos, I believe it's good enough. So in the last part, the second one, I was talking about a lot about Strauss, and I was finishing with again with Oppenheimer's duality and saying something about Oppenheimer being a responsible man and not going to too far extremes, and yet having maybe still not only a hubris problem or arrogance, but also some hidden tendency for destruction. And I was talking about the incapacity of the people who participate in Oppenheimer's hearing to understand complexity and nuances. And I was relating that to a lot of what we see in our world nowadays. Now, I want to continue and talk about. I've said that I'll mention Jean again. Jean, who's in the film reality, was Oppenheimer's first lover, and and um, and so I wanted to say something about her attraction to him. And Nolan gives this kind of a significant room in the movie. Um, and I think that a part of what Nolan is trying to show us is that she sort of recognizes in Oppenheimer when they meet in the same communist or socialist cocktail party, Freudian thanatos, let's call it this way, a power, a drive for destruction, in simple words, and and which is related to his some of his abilities, his vital abilities, and for instance, his control, which is related to the ability to manage, and his scientific abilities, intellectual and political faculties and talents that Oppenheimer has. And I'm not saying that these things are male tendencies or powers, but of course she's attracted to him as a male, having these virtues or powers in him, and and all these things are related to the both strength and quality of the quantity and the quality of Oppenheimer's life drive, life force, vitality. And she sees that in him, I think, that we can see that. And in a way, I'll say it carefully, but I think she kind of wants to devour this, or be intimate with these things and make them a part of, in a way, her flesh, and which is a part many times of what we call sex, and the reason for which some women are attracted to some men. This is part of the game, psychologically and physically, and so I believe. And hoping that I'm not making anyone too angry here, and this is also maybe why she introduces him to Vishnu's words. She gives him a book while they're having sex, and I believe it's the Bhagavad Gita, and she lets him read, or commands him reading Vishnu's words in Sanskrit during the intercourse, and so he says, and maybe it's during her orgasm or leading to it. I think that this is what we see. I am death, and this is maybe very arousing, and also because death is so associated with life. Because I was elaborating in the last video the ways that which our life powers and instincts and survival mechanisms, they are both vital for survival and preservation of mankind and continuity and so on, and longevity, and they're also destructive. And it's a matter of context. And maybe nature is like that. Whatever gives life has also to kill in a way, but sometimes it gets out of control and becomes an ill thing. The atom bomb, we'll see, is something that is aiming to protect the livable world, freedom, the human freedom, but maybe it will destroy the world. And so Oppenheimer is I think we see him, he's quite alarmed and worried in this scene, and reading the words in a kind of a state of shock, and I think he's careful regarding these rooms in his entity, these places in his entity, but perhaps he's not sufficiently aware of this whole issue. And this is, I think, again, a part of what the film is about. Sorry for that. And so despite his caution and his tendency for building warm friendships and his reflective tendencies and sincerity, as I said, he has these things. He's reporting to his friends that he's a lousy dad and asks for help, which is a really good thing and reflective. And he says that he's a bad brother for Frank. So he acknowledges his problems oftentimes and also tries to fix them. But maybe there's still remains something unrealistic in Oppenheimer, which is stubbornly asking, and this is the big question of this film, right? Will the destruction element, which is so explicit, this destruction capacity was never as explicit as it is in the Trinity experiment, right? And later in Japan, as it's being used, in Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Can this destructive power can lead to redemption from wars and finish wars forever? And at some point, Oppenheimer believes in that. He's not the only one, but he's one of the people who believe in that. And so can total destruction power lead to situation of total preservation of life and peace? This is maybe a paradox. This is maybe believing in this. It might be naive, and there's something that maybe here is not. He calls the experiment Trinity, which is similar to the Sanskrit word that he mentions, to the combination of three gods in Hindu tradition who become one god. And so can't Krishna be also Brahma? The power of destruction, can it be the preservation power of the world? And will it serve prey and annihilation and nothingness, or love and order and harmony? Talking a bit more about instincts and our life force, an instinctive and creative breakthrough of life power can be pulled out as in different ways. It can be manifested or operated, and so one is an impulse to give life and health to the whole, like for instance the whole of humanity. But it can also manifest in a way which is coming out from this very typical and sometimes self-deceptive will for personal power. And these two drives, they can't really combine. And I think this is a part of what Oppenheimer doesn't understand in the film, and Nolan tried to show us. This is one of the messages. And so Oppenheimer asked himself before the Trinity explosion, he's saying that out loud, is there anything that can stop us? Because he is concerned. He's not sure. He's not completely sure. He's in a dilemma. But he also has the fascination and even maybe uncontrolled desire to see, despite of his rejection of Teller's hydrogen plan, which is something much bigger in scale and power of explosion, if the bomb will work, and to experience this orgasmic spectacle that we see in the film, which is so amazing on the IMAX screen and so terrifying, and at the same time, I hope that this is what was for you. If not, watch the film again and try to experience this duality. This 3 kilometers high fire mushroom erupting from, the power of mankind, and specifically myself, Oppenheimer, and this emanates from his masculine creative power and impulses. It's like saying, after 60,000 years of human existence, as we are, biologically as we are now, after all these years and generations, I have created worlds destroying power. I am like God. And this is very tempting, and this is very problematic, and this is why in the first video I say Nolan's motto for the film and what Rose says to Oppenheimer is it's talking about the mythological figure of Prometheus, and I was also mentioning Faust. And if you know the story of Faust, an interesting story. And on the same day that Oppenheimer publishes his theoretical paper about black holes, this is beforehand, this is some years before, around 1 year before the war starts, Hitler kind of steals the show from Oppenheimer and the headlines in the newspapers with his invasion to Poland. It's Poland, not Austria. I remember Austria. So it's Poland. It's right before the war begins, actually, 1939, and so this maybe raises hints to a question. And this question is, are there two denied or not acknowledged sort of races of types of human beings that compose humanity? The thugs who are addicted to power on the one hand, and the peace-seeking pluralists on the other hand, even if they are imperfect, but still tending more to this. Or maybe it's not like that, because I think that unconsciously we refer to reality many times as like that. Look at what happens in America. I think that many progressive people, they look at Trump supporters as just these people are it's the fucked up type of people, and I'm not sure that it's true. And the other party is thinking the same thing about, and we see it in Brazil, Israeli, we see it in Israel now, and it tends to be 50-50 many times, which is a really strange thing. So are we equal in number of parts in humanity? What we see in Israel today is really similar to what we saw in what we see in America, and the vision, and back in the time, the film talks a lot about Oppenheimer's being involved in what happens in Spain. The same thing in Spain of the 1930s. So, but what I think is that maybe there are some people among us who are just a little less hurt and just a little more aware, or maybe not less hurt but more aware, I don't know, of the essence of their wounds and their psychological wounds and their impulses and drives and the labyrinth of, you know, and loops and grooves of their obsessive thinking ways and patterns. A bit people who are you know, a bit more aware, and I think Nolan, this is the truth about people for Nolan, because all his films are talking, including the Batmans, are talking about and we're talking about these things now for 40 minutes or maybe more videos, and probably one or two more. These really loop. I was talking in the last video a lot about Strauss's like loops, unaware loops, and I was mentioning Lenny, Memento, Nolan's first film, and that Nolan is what is making these films for us in order to give us an instrument of reflection, a mirror, so we can see our loops and help us get out of these loops. And so it's not that some of us are just, I don't know, idiots. It's a matter of how hurt I am and how aware I am regarding also something which is not trauma and psychology. It's my passions, my instincts, my drives, and the way that the thought mechanism is interpreting these two things: our wounds, psychological wounds, and our wills or drives or urges. And there's a healthy way to interpret them. And Nolan wants to lead us to this way. And really many of his films, like the mind of many of us, are a labyrinth. I mean, in the film Inception, the film takes place inside a maze, a labyrinth. The same thing in Memento, I think, in a way, cinematic maze. So from beginning the moment that the Germans managed to, I don't know how you say it in English, crack an atom, or break an atom. I think that this takes place earlier, in the beginning of the 1930s or the late 1920s. We see it in the film. It's a small experiment. They're still not creating a big chain reaction. It's just a small demonstration of this possibility that they managed to show, and everyone reads about that in the newspapers, as we see in the film. The same moment that happens, all men in the film, including Oppenheimer, immediately think about the possibility of an immense bomb. And what does it mean about us? What does it say about us people? Right. And immediately after that, Oppenheimer quarrels with Jean. This is the next scene, over her claim of him neglecting her and his distance or partial intimacy and attitude, and the relationship, and he is trying to compensate her with flowers, and this is described by her as hypocritical, and and she's kind of saying that he's busy with himself, and so we understand with his power. And again, immediately after that, the next scene, we're 25 minutes. We see the political gathering in which Oppenheimer promotes the physicists union and writes, which is similar to the socialist idea, which is similar to the labor unions, and so Oppenheimer is really caring about the force of unity. Yeah, I say before, vitality can manifest in giving life and health to the whole, and so we see that existing in Oppenheimer, but also a contradictory power of separation, like thinking immediately about a giant bomb, not even thinking about its meaning when realizing that something small happened, seeing this option and not even having a delay mechanism before telling other people, look, now we can do maybe that. And so in the with Gene, he's partial and kind of differentiating or distinguishing, or but trying not to be completely that, to be like half intimate, and with other people he can be really working hard for, uniting. And so we're talking again a lot about duality, and when Oppenheimer meets Kitty, who will be his wife, he tells her about the life being something which vibrates in between. I think this is the right way to say that, existence and non-existence, and apparently life and the existence of our loose or almost non-existing bodies, as Oppenheimer explains that to Kitty when he says that virtually we're nothing. we're made of almost all of what we are is just empty space. Life and the existing of our bodies, it requires control, and this is also because it's so temporal, and really it's almost nothing but empty space and can easily fall apart. But it seems also that in the film that control needs controlling, and because physical and sexual attraction, or emotional and sexual attraction, which are things that they are enable and necessary for, they are necessary for enabling existence, as we know. They also give rise in their extreme manifestation, which is pretty common in our world, as we know, to betrayal and intrigue and to conflict and struggle. And this happens to Oppenheimer, right? It happens to him in this film and in his community, and some people try to warn him. So controlling can be a false attempt to promote my own identity and my own personal body over those of others, like taking somebody else's wife, which we see in the film, or promoting my nation over other nations in the name of security, which we'll find out in the film that is a problematic thing or approach, and a backlash of a rejection and destruction is coming out of that oftentimes. And I was talking in the last video about the chain reaction, the emotional and social chain reaction. I won't repeat now, I'm maybe repeating too much what I say in former videos, so just, if you haven't watched the last videos, go back to them and look at that, watch them and look at that. And I think this is how Oppenheimer mistakenly understands it, as Nolan wants to show us. He betrays his friends sometimes in his community, but he tries to control his controlling element as a male. So to betray and to take, but not to betray too much. To destroy all sorts of things, but not to destroy too much. And this is a real problem. And so we've asked, can total power of destruction can really lead to peace? Or must it lead to more war and destruction? And the film presents us or introduces us with 4 positions that are represented by different figures or characters in the film. I won't describe each of the positions because it will be too long, but we have, for instance, the Teller approach, the Truman approach, Szilard, I hope that I express the name correctly, and Einstein approach, and Oppenheimer's approach. And Oppenheimer is somewhere in the middle and living the dilemma. And I want to connect this to something which takes place, we see in the film, and kind of what is this about, and looks like a whole different question, but I think not really. And the way to put it is maybe to quote Oppenheimer, who says it's something like, it's a paradox that light is both a particle and a wave. He says that when he teaches in the classroom after coming back from Europe to the US, and there's only one student in the room who wants to promote the quantum mechanics in the US, and then he says, but it works mathematically, and he says with a high confidence. He says it with a high confidence, and Einstein, we see Einstein in the film saying that this is a bluff, and he says to Oppenheimer something like, I don't remember the exact words, but he says the only thing that is identical in you and me, Einstein and Oppenheimer, is that both of us despise mathematics, and this is also illustrated by the fact that Oppenheimer he thinks that he contradicts the German experiment that I talked about a few minutes ago, breaking an atom, he says this is impossible, and then he starts, writing all sorts of logical, mathematical lines on the blackboard, and this is an abstract mathematical move, and he finishes and he says, with the glory of triumph, he smiles and he says, "You see, I proved it. Impossible. The Germans are lying. They didn't do it." But at the same time that he's doing that, in the other room, his colleague is successfully repeating the German experiment using a physical machine in the lab, right? Which is something material and not abstract. And this is, by the way, when Oppenheimer says, immediately when he understands that it is possible, regardless of what the blackboard is showing, that we can build a bomb. And what I mentioned before. We're 63 minutes. We can do this time maybe 40 minutes or 45 minutes, as last time was. So in quantum physics, there's only probability and not certainty. And Einstein says in the film that if you want a bomb, you need to know that you're not going to destroy the world, and you need to be certain about that. And Einstein himself recommended to Roosevelt developing an atom bomb because what he said to Roosevelt is that Hitler is trying to develop one. So we need to. Einstein was living in the US already back then, and so we need to be first. But from when he hears when Oppenheimer informs him, as we see in the film, that there's a small chance that the bomb will create a chain reaction that will burn the entire atmosphere and destroy the Earth, Einstein strongly opposes the project, the Manhattan Project, and according to Einstein, how to put it, certainties and real safety can't be achieved by, or I'll say it in another way. If you really want safety and you really want certainty and you are really responsible, you need to cooperate with the Nazis. Although being Nazis, and Einstein was a Jew, and inform them about this chance that the bomb, that if whoever creates this bomb and uses it in an experiment or otherwise, might destroy the whole of the Earth, and all people will die, whether American or not, or German or whatever. And so Einstein is kind of despising the Americans for trying to resemble the Nazis in order to defend themselves from the Nazis. This is, by the way, the real reason for which he's not going to talk to Strauss any further after Oppenheimer informing him about what I've just said. And so the Nazis are kind of, as we know, disorderly, right? What happened in Germany is lunatic, or in more objective language, highly disordered psychologically and probably neurologically, and things were getting out of control. And Einstein's approach, as far as I understand it, is in the film is you can't emotionally and physically control the world's crazy people before and without realizing that you are also disordered and imperfect, and because you intend to ensure freedom, but paradoxically it's leading to what happens in the film, an increasing compression or contraction of the act of control, both internally and externally. And we see in the film what Americans do to other Americans in sake of security, until even, in a way, the Americans in the film, the liberals, the Democrats, they become frightened, contracted, violent, and in a way fascist, or partially fascist, like the Nazis, some of them. And I don't know, like, if the Truman and Oppenheimer conversation that we see in the film, the same scene, was really like that in reality. But the way that Nolan wants to describe us Truman is that Truman is really, a really problematic guy. Maybe not like Hitler, but he's on the same scale. Again, don't be angry with me. I don't know if it was like that. The historical figure was really like that, but Nolan wants to show us something. This is really clear, and the figure of this inquiry man, security, this guy that whose father was a Russian. Never mind, it's a good enough example. I don't remember his name right now. And I want to say, this is, you might be surprised, but watching Oppenheimer, I was thinking again and again, recalling scenes from Godfather 1 and Godfather 2. And the way that Michael Corleone in these two films, who is in his way to ensure the protection of his loved ones, is acting in a way that is eventually more and more eventually leading to destroying his own self and his family and his his marriage, and so a part of what Coppola wanted to show us in these two films, and I think that Nolan here is in the same line with Coppola, is that when we are doing everything in order to control the people who threat what we cherish and love and is soft for us and holy for us, we actually we destroy. what is holy to us and our loved ones, and so we need to understand that. So this is 45 minutes, and I think that we're going to do one video more, so it will be overall totally 4 videos or 2 more, so 5 videos. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you're feeling that you're learning something or discovering like new points or insights regarding the film and Nolan. You are invited to like the video and comment. I'm Raphael Daniel, or Raphael Daniel. I'm a cinema critic. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.